Welcome to Civil Discourse Now. This is our last segment on February 25th, 2012. My co-host, Paul Ogden.
Morning, Mark. Well, it may not be morning anymore. It might be afternoon.
Oh, just blow it out your ass. God. We're here talking about whether the United States is biased towards Israel.
And I thought I was going to swear.
This isn't quite.
We don't tolerate that kind of profanity around here. Damn it.
Now look, here's the thing. This might be boring to some people in terms of talking about the history of the Middle East and how it was we arrived now. And we're going to be talking about the U.S. bias towards Israel now. But let me make a point. This is the internet. We're not tied to 3 channels on network TV anymore, so you have to worry about getting so many people watching one channel and drawing interest. We're on the internet. That means that everybody's watching all these different things all the time. So we can talk about this and talk about it in depth. And we might be wrong, we might be right, we might be interesting, we might be boring, but somebody out there is going to be listening to this and saying, I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was an Israel before 1967 or before Exodus that I saw when I was in the 8th grade in 1963. So if we're a little boring and a little dull, I'm sorry about that, but we're just going to go ahead and we're going to talk anyway. If you want to listen to it and you want to watch it, that's cool. If you don't, man, and that's civil discourse, because I didn't say anything.
You tell him! You tell him!
Yeah!
Mark, did you not take your pill this morning?
I believe I'm a bad influence.
Okay.
Modern day.
Modern day, we're giving a hell of a lot of money to Israel.
Well, not a whole lot.
Well, compared to other countries, we give them most.
If we cut it out of the budget, it wouldn't even come close to making up the deficit.
Well, we give more by far towards to Israel, and we give military aid. We don't give anything to Palestine, do we?
No.
Okay.
Well, no, we do give some, but we probably shouldn't.
Okay, wait, I'm talking
I
about
don't think we do.
not military aid. I'm just talking about food, where people are starving in Gaza, and they're starving in Gaza.
Yeah, we give them aid. We shouldn't.
Okay,
but we give them
how much?
aid.
Do you know how much we give?
Not off the top of my head.
More
No.
than a lot of other countries might.
Okay, so we don't have the numbers here, and I was pulling up stuff about ancient history, and I guess that didn't meet the approval of some people on the panel, but I came here to discuss history in part because I think it's important to understand the foundations of problems that we face today. So, Paul, what did you find in terms of today? What studies, what numbers, what statistics do you have to enter this discussion finally about whether the United States is biased towards Israel?
Well, we give a lot of foreign aid to
How much?
Israel compared to other countries. About $5 billion.
5 billion?
Yeah.
Okay, we give them.
I'm guessing on that.
Okay, and we give them military aid.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Per capita, do we give Israel more aid than we do any other country?
Yes.
And that's through the government, not through private individuals.
Most of it's
they're
through
in
the government.
Top 10, but
Most of it's through the government, but they also get a lot of contributions from Jewish Americans.
which is a Zionist thing.
Yeah, and actually
Zionism.
Zionism is stronger here in the United States, some could say, than it is in Israel.
Well, that's not
That's a
necessarily
sort of
true,
stretch.
but they certainly play on the Jews that don't live in Israel, because part of Zionism is that they want Jews to return to Israel, and that means all Jews. That means the Jews in the U.S., the Jews in Europe, the Jews in the Soviet Union or the former Soviet Union, Jews everywhere. By Eretz Israel, they're supposed to go back, and they don't.
And they have citizenship if they choose to go back.
They do.
So that's
So they'll take their money though in lieu of their persons.
But going back to then United States policy towards Israel, if there is a vote in the UN, and there have been several recently, the United States uses its veto because when the UN was formed, there were like United States, Britain, France, Russia, and then China was now Taiwan. They were considered to be permanent members. And in other words, the five big powers at the table. They each were given a veto. One of those countries could veto a vote in the Security Council. And it used to be that the Soviet Union was always vetoing everything and saying "niet" and not "ni," but "niet." And now it's the United States voting with Israel to block certain things. Israel's not on the Security Council right now because they rotate members of the Security Council that are non.
Well, but that's
60 countries.
That's a little unfair because, Russia and China veto any action to be taken against Syria or Iran, for instance. Yeah, so it's not the U.S. being contrarian. It's the U.S. trying to protect an ally.
Well, I understand that, but then that goes back towards, well, we are biased towards Israel.
Well, and maybe we ought to address why we ally ourselves with Israel. What is in the United States' interest that causes us to ally with Israel rather than with an Arab country?
Because there's votes here in this country.
And is that how we should
heavy
do
Jewish
our
concentration of
foreign
population?
policy based on
I'd
how
say
many
it
votes you
should
get in
be,
New York?
But that's
Miami?
the realism. They are a political force.
And I think you're right. And because FDR, you mentioned FDR earlier, a consummate politician who was quite aware of where votes were coming from or not coming from, certainly.
And so we talk about, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about Citizens United. The decision in that is and people talk about the Israeli lobby in the United States, and it's very real that they contribute funds to certain candidates who, and I'm not saying Jewish candidates, but
Newt Gingrich. His biggest supporter is like one of the richest Zionists in the United States.
And Newt will be whatever theology or philosophy you want him to be.
That's right.
That's wrong.
No, I really think Newt will too. I mean, I don't know that he has a soul, but
I'm not touching that one.
Okay.
I'm not touching it. But I think it's. I think if you argue from a purely utilitarian standpoint, it's hard to argue why the U.S. should support Israel, because there are all these other Arab countries. They have oil that we want to buy, and they cause us trouble all over the world because we support Israel. I think from a moral standpoint, though, you can make a very good case for supporting Israel over all these other Arab countries. It's the only democracy, only democratically represented government in the Middle East, the only one by far.
Well, wait a minute, that's kind of a stretch, because the Constitution of Israel provides that certain seats in the Knesset are reserved for specific religious sects, so that it's not really a democracy like we conceive of a democracy, and you have control of the government in part reliant upon fringe religious elements, which some of them are. Gosh, it's not like that's happening here today in the United States.
Yeah, but it's a Jewish state. It was founded as a Jewish state because they have nowhere else to go.
But there are people there who believe that being Jewish is not a religious matter. It's a sectarian state. That being Jewish has more to do with cultural heritage and ethnicity, and not so much to do with religion.
Oh, and I understand that. Judaism is not just a religion, it's an ethnicity. And that's the cause of a lot of confusion.
And I would posit that Israel is actually the biggest socialist country we ally ourselves with.
Well,
they don't really. Look how much property is held in common there.
But
That's 70% of it.
Except, it might be the biggest socialist country we ally ourselves with, but it's nowhere near as socialist as the countries around it.
I don't know if I class that
I mean,
as
Syria, it's the party that runs Syria is the Ba'ath Socialist Party.
They can call themselves whatever they like, but that doesn't make them socialist. I consider them authoritarian.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying what they call themselves and what their basis for their economic system
Nazis
is.
called themselves socialists. That didn't make them socialists.
Well, I'm just saying
And they weren't very sociable.
It was a socialist system. They're totalitarian, but they're socialist. Same with Iraq and same with Egypt.
Well, sure.
They're socialists.
But let's go back to the point. I think we're getting off. I want to go back and see what exactly is our interest in aligning, but besides the moral that you mentioned.
Well, I mentioned the moral.
What is our real politics?
A couple of things. One is we have so many Jewish citizens here in the United States.
And they're concentrated in a few states, key states.
That's the moral thing.
New York, New Jersey,
Well, but no,
a lot of Florida.
That's political. Second is moral, because I think that there's guilt, and I blogged on this. I think that there's a collective guilt in the West over 2 millennia of prejudice against Jews and the Holocaust. And a lot of people think, well, really screwed them for all these years. Let's protect them. Where at the same time, you have several million refugees from Palestine or people who are compressed into Gaza who are just as furious over being victimized by prejudice, and you put them in to the same small area geographically, and that's not good. Have you ever taken sodium and tossed it into water?
Sodium.
I mean, sodium, I think.
Na.
Yeah, it like spins and pops. I think it's sodium. I mean, it was one of those that we had an element, we tossed it in, it's sodium. And I'm looking at our technical consultants here to the side, and they assured me I was right on that matter of chemistry. Well, you're putting these two peoples who are really pissed off at each other, and they've got histories of terrorism now. The Israelis committed acts of terror to create, in part, to create the modern state of Israel, and the Palestinians, what the hell else are they going to do? No, I mean, the Egyptians, the Syrians, the Jordanians turned their backs on them. So what else are they going to do to get any kind of help from the rest of the world? And I'm not justifying it. I'm saying it's not surprising.
How can we then sit there and say that, oh gosh, Syria should be, the rebels in Syria should be armed when we refuse to arm the Palestinians?
Because the Syrian government hates us, and they have fought against U.S. interests for some time, and so it's in our interest to topple that government? I think that's a pretty big difference there.
No, we should never be in the business of toppling any government.
Sure we should.
No, the only time in which we should go against another nation state is when, as the Constitution dictates, there is a resolution presented before Congress and war is declared.
So if we could have toppled Hitler in the 1930s because we saw the threat that he represented, you wouldn't have done it.
Dr. McCoy was there, and he tried to save that woman, and who was it? Who was the actress?
Joan Collins.
Joan Collins. He tried to save Joan Collins. She got hit by the car.
Damn it, Jim, I'm a surgeon, not a politician.
So, no, I wouldn't have known that then. And if anybody...
They predicted it. There were some people who were saying that this guy is dangerous.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people who say that about just anybody who's a rising political figure. If there was anybody that should have been assassinated, during World War II to really impact the Nazi war effort, it was Albert Speer. If he had been assassinated, the Nazis, the war would have ended about a year and a half or 2 years earlier.
No.
I know
he was the Reich Minister of Armaments, but no, he wasn't. You kill Hitler, you end the war. Not if you kill Albert Speer.
Okay. Anyways, no, you don't overthrow another government, and you don't do that with Syria.
Yes, you do.
The only effective thing that you could do is, as happened at Camp David, is have the two most belligerent people you could possibly think about from either side sitting down and signing a treaty. And we were so close. And Yasser Arafat, during the Clinton administration, bollocks that up because they were close to coming to peace.
Yeah, but you can't make people who don't want to talk. The Israelis have always been willing to talk. The Syrians have not been willing to talk.
Well, is it though that they're willing to talk, or they understand that the Arabs are not willing to talk? Because I think the Israelis understand the Arab psyche a lot better than we do.
Yes, they do.
We're at the end. I'm sorry, this has been fun. If people out there found this boring, that's too bad. Found it interesting, great. They don't want to talk to the Syrians, and I'll tell you why. Assad is a former dentist. You really trust you trust somebody to put their hands in your fingers in your mouth?
He's an optometrist.
This has been Civil Discourse Now. Thank you very much. We hope you watch us next week when we talk about Super Tuesday. Paul, Jeff, Kurt, and I say goodbye. Talk to you later.